Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of It's Just Bodybuilding. I'm your host, Big Ron Partlow, and with me is my co-host and currently sporting a much thicker and better beard than me, Dusty Hanshaw.
Well, that's what it's all about. I actually had somebody last week comment they wanted to borrow the beard for a couple of weeks. I haven't figured out how to do this, but in the bodybuilding world, man, money's tight. I'm going to figure it out and say, hell yeah, you can borrow it.
Was it a girl asking to borrow your beard? Because that might mean something else.
That's tricky. Yeah, I don't think she was looking for a ride. I think this guy actually wanted to borrow it.
Okay.
Face attached, just the beard.
He wanted to wear it to the clubs.
I guess so. Flavor saver. Who knows?
So what do you think of the feedback from episode 1?
Man, I was stoked, especially because, let's be honest, we put it together and we just kind of ran with it. And that was always our plan, was to it's just bodybuilding. The title that you hit with that is so accurate because it's really that simple. And I think people would be a little surprised to know that that show and now this one, it's not like we have a big plan for how this is going to roll. It's kind of like, oh, we've got this person on or no one on.
Yeah.
We talk about a couple things. Okay, go. And we start rolling,
We might talk about training mostly. We might talk about something else mostly. We're not sure.
You guys are basically at dinner with us. We just eat food because I had to eat mine before we started.
So I thought, man, we had such a good reaction from episode 1. I said, we have to start getting prepared to be more famous. And so I thought, if we're going to be famous, I just wanted to see what the competition was. So I typed into Google, I said, famous people named Dusty.
Oh, shit.
And so I got a list of like the top 30 people that are famous that are named Dusty.
I think one of them better be a wrestler,
Do you know who number 1 is?
Is that Dusty Rhodes?
It's Dusty Rhodes.
Ah, I'm a winner.
Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, the pro wrestler, Dusty Rhodes, died in 2015. He's the number 1 most famous Dusty.
I'm coming for you.
Number 3 is Dusty Springfield. She was like a pop singer. It goes down Dusty Hill, the bass player from ZZ Top.
You were so close to me with a hill right there.
He's number 7, a couple of pro baseball players, that sort of thing. And then number 16, most famous person named Dusty on the Google search, Dusty Hanshaw.
I'm number 16. I'm Brett Hull. That's his number right there.
You are listed as the 16th. You're ahead of a guy who played in the NBA, who's number 17.
Which, can we assume that the Dusty in the NBA was a white guy?
He was. Well, he might not be. I don't know. I don't want to say. It's one of those ambiguous pictures. I'm not sure.
I'm saying that'd be a tricky name for anybody else,
Yeah. So you are the 16th most famous Dusty
that makes
already.
Or without the show.
So then I searched Ronald, and there's a lot more famous Ronalds.
Well, yeah, I would say so.
And,
right?
So the top 50, I wasn't in the top 50. I didn't come out. So I thought, well, I'll try Ron. Searched famous people named Ron. Still no cigar for the top 50.
You should just go with Ron Partlow or Big Ron Partlow. I think you'd have nailed that one.
The most famous Big Ron Partlow, yes. You bet. So just letting Dusty know where he is on the food chain there.
Now like every 10 episodes, I'm going to be bringing this shit up. Like, I'm at 13.
Yeah, assuming they update that page often.
I'm going to call that guy. Like, hey, dude, don't fucking sleep on me. We're doing a podcast now.
No, definitely. So I was happy with the feedback. It's funny because I felt like we just kind of did a warm-up episode.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't really remember what we talked about. It was kind of like, it was just one of those things. And I kind of thought, well, are we going to put this out? I don't really know if we said anything.
Right.
And then next thing it came back. Everyone was like, oh, it was awesome. Can't wait to hear the next one. And so we're, definitely happy to be back, man. And, it's exciting when you see the numbers going up every hour, just bang, 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 the uploads, boom, boom, boom. Or the downloads. What do you call them? The downloads.
Whatever. As long as they watch or listen. No, I actually had a client reach out to me and said, on the what would you say makes you a great coach question you had, and it was funny because he told me what he thought it was, which was cool. But then the funny part, I go, yeah, I said, we don't talk about what we're going to bring up. I said, so I just said the first thing that came to my mind, and I go, you want to hear even worse? I don't actually remember what I said.
Yeah.
And he was like, and of course he knew, thank God. I was like, oh, well, that's true too. I didn't lie.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, cool to see the feedback on that. And one thing I dig too is I was excited to see a lot of females that are in the industry following as well, whether they're bikini, whatever, and seeing value in what we're kind of brought to the table. So it's definitely hitting on the note of not just being meathead bullshit.
Yeah, no, I was very happy to hear from female listeners. We got a lot of messages and tags from the ladies saying, you know, I'm listening to this, and I don't know, I was sort of thinking maybe they don't want to, maybe they appreciate that they're getting like a super hardcore sort of view, and they're not being like, you know, talked down to in a way like someone's trying to market to them. You know what I mean? Like the alternative would be, you know, purposely softening the conversation to attract more female listeners. And they're like, fuck that. I'm tired of that. So maybe that's why they like listening to us. Cause you know,
well, I think too, since you prep people as well, I would definitely take my female clients toe to toe with the men as far as hardcore. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm not concerned with offending or talking around anything that they're going to be doing, because of a lot of people I train, there's a couple females that I've prepped for shows and shit. I'm like, damn, she might be fucking more hardcore than me. I don't know, you know?
Yeah. In fact, I'd say a couple of the most hardcore, like to the T, gram of rice, perfection of execution clients I've had have been female.
For sure. I agree with that.
You know,
I got one right now that actually, I was laughing because she just posted a picture. She got a couple kids. She was out at Olive Garden, and her kids were really on her about, you know, wanting her to eat. It's off season. She's going to do the Arnold next year. And she took a picture and sent it to me of her chicken from Olive Garden on a scale, kind of quietly weighing it, you know, so she could get it just right. And it was funny because I know a lot of people, their initial kickback on that is like, Jesus, live. And mine is actually kind of the opposite. I was like, man, she wants this shit.
Yeah.
Because there's a time and a place. You know, I did tell her, because she is super focused. I'm like, hey, you know, when your kid has a birthday, it's off season. Trust me, celebrate, have a piece of cake. It's good for your family. But because your kid wants to go to Olive Garden, I'm down for either eating your shit before you go or weighing it at the table, whatever it is. Because you know, I've done it and I've not done it. And I remember the very first year I worked with Chris, I was with him for 7 months. And finally I was like, hey, can I go out to dinner tonight? And he was like, what? I said, well, we're about to start prep, and, you know, I haven't had a meal off of my plan since we started. And he was like, oh, shit, I just assumed that every now and then you were popping one in. And, of course, Chris being Chris, he's like, but do me one favor. Send me pictures the next day and tell me what you ate, because I want to know what it does.
Right.
So I went out, tore it up, had, you know, I mean, I went a little far. It'd been 7 months. And what was funny about it was I sent him the pictures, and he goes, all right, next Saturday, do the same thing. I had to email him back. I'm like, hey, I can't eat that much next Saturday, man. I thought, shit. He's like, we'll have a cheat meal. I was like, okay.
That was a one-time thing.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know if I was ever getting another one of these, so I went all in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, another thing that I'm thankful for is the number of people that have been reaching out that have been willing to come on.
Oh, for sure.
That's been very, very cool. And, you know, we got to touch on the fact that we have a guest on today, and we had a last minute switch.
Yes. Yeah, we had, fortunately, I alluded to very early that we would get Dante on the show. And I messaged him, and he had told me he should be fine, but didn't know with business and things like that. But so I just said, all right, let's roll with it. We're good to go. And he followed up with me and said, hey, I got a bunch of things going on. I can make this happen, but it'd be a lot better for me not to. And I said, no, don't. We have a list, thank God.
Yeah.
So we'll make that switch, and hopefully we'll line it up. It's just so difficult with him. It's kind of funny. In hindsight, of course, when I step back, I'm like, you know, I felt slightly guilty, because in reality, you know, I kind of pulled a friend card. I'm like, hey, you know, the guy that doesn't have time to do this shit? Well, we're friends, so help me out. And he was definitely willing, but told him, okay, we'll do it another time. And then I start looking at my text messages, and he is like me, and you know this. You text me last night at 10 o'clock, and I'll hit you up at 4 in the morning. I mean, when I see things or when I have times when I answer, I'm thinking locking someone in for 40 minutes, all of our guests, is pretty awesome that anyone can just pause their life for us and say, yeah, we'll jump in on the show.
Yeah, it was funny. So I was starting to reach out to people to just line them up for Mondays, right? Like just say, hey, Mondays at 10:30 PST, this is when we record. Does that work for you? Do you foresee a Monday that would be good? Just kind of letting people maybe get back to us and we can plug the calendar. And I had just messaged our guest today just to ask him how Mondays were. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, Mondays are awesome. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was going to get back to him. And then you text me and you're like, we got a code red. we need a guest. And I thought, shit. So, I was like, who do I reach out to? And luckily it worked out. I thought he just said Mondays are awesome.
Well, how about tomorrow?
Yeah. So I got back to him. I had to check with you first because I didn't want maybe you to ask like 4 people. And I'm like, shit, right. The last thing you want is 3 people responding, I'm in.
Right.
So we had a little bit of like a panic there, but so I messaged him and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it tomorrow. So on short notice, we have Iain Valliere on today. I'm very excited to have him on. He's one of the most popular guys on the circuit right now, and has just stomped his way to the kind of the first call out of every show he's in now. What are you looking forward to talking to Iain about?
You know what, man? I mean, I can already see where this is going. Being that this is the first time I've had a podcast where I'm not the guest. Having had our time with Iain already, I'm already sitting here going, shit, I need another episode because we could easily do a full podcast on his coaching.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we could do a full podcast on his bodybuilding. We can do a full podcast on his life as I'll call it the Canadian fitness family up there. I mean, there's literally just so many pieces. So it was funny when you get done with your time, you're like, shit, we got a lot done and there's a lot more.
Yeah. We had Iain for about 45 minutes, I think.
Yep.
And, hit him with some good questions where he gave us these nice big answers. And, he went into detail about some training and told us, he finally told everyone the official story about the arm. Right. So I enjoyed that. Yeah. But after it was done, I was like, man, we could have kept him on I could have asked him. I had like 20 more questions I could have hit him with,
Yeah.
So, who knows, maybe Iain can be one of our kind of our frequent guests if we, he seems happy to be here.
The way his career's going, man, I'm afraid as he climbs up that Olympia ladder, he's gonna be harder and harder to get on here because, all kidding aside, the changes have been nuts, and I'm stoked for everyone to see what he accredits that change to because it's so exactly what I would expect. So I'm excited to have people hear the simplicity of success once again with the bodybuilding world.
You bet. So Dusty, you want to bring Iain on?
Absolutely. Thanks
for everybody. The Iain Valliere interview. Episode 2, it's Just Bodybuilding. We're going to have Iain Valliere on right after this. Hey, Iain. Good to have you on. Episode 2 of It's Just Bodybuilding. You're on with Dusty and Ron.
Hey, Ron. Hey, Dusty. How you guys doing?
Really good. What's going on right now with you? TikTok.
Yeah, just finished up the season for the year. Just taking a little time to rest and recover and, get this off season started and get back to it next year. Just taking some time with Melissa, with my wife, just to enjoy, a bit of each other's company that's not in prep mode. It's been a nice little change,
How do you feel about the season?
I got a lot of mixed feelings about the season, which obviously there was a coaching change that came at the end of the season, which we can discuss later in this, I'm sure. As a whole, I guess I was happy. There were showings that I'm happy with and I'm proud of. Vancouver, I was happy and I was proud of. Tampa, I was definitely happy and proud of. And then it's kind of interlaced with a few that I'm not so happy and so proud of, so that was kind of the frustrating thing with it is almost like, you get one right, get one wrong, get one right. And it was like alternating of which was a little frustrating for me for sure. So,
I know you weren't happy in Toronto.
No, I mean, I'm nothing against John. I think if I'd been at what is 100% for me, I can beat John, no problem. I mean, I don't think there's anything against John. I think that 100% Ian beat John. And, for me to see that opportunity slip away like that is fucking frustrating. You know what I mean? And for me, especially a show like Toronto that, I felt like I was ready to win a show like that. And the show that's like, the pinnacle of Canadian shows, Vancouver's a great show, but Toronto's the show. It's like the New York Pro for the American guys, right?
It's been there a lot longer, yeah.
Been longer, it's a tier 2 show now. It's just a big show. I mean, sure, the lineup in Vancouver was bigger and better. I'll say that. But in terms of like the prowess behind the title, I mean, that was just one I really, really wanted to win. So that was frustrating to kind of feel like I fell short in terms of the package I brought there. And then that resulted in me obviously losing to John, right?
Yeah. I want to tell the story about how I met you. Mm-hmm. And then Dusty can tell his first Ian story. I'm sure he's got one. But I was at the Ontario's one year. Well, I was at the Toronto Super Show, right? Which is also at the time it was the Ontario's as well. And I was there with Mutant, and they wanted me to hand out the trophy at the Ontario's. Oh, yeah. So I went to the show, and this fucking 21-year-old comes out, and he just looks insane, like as hard as any pro, like shredded to the bone, glutes, and like it was just nuts. He comes out and just annihilates everyone. And then I go and I give you the trophy, and I go, "You got a big future, kid," and you just laughed. And then 2 weeks later, was it 2 weeks later?
2 weeks, yeah.
You go to the Amateur Olympia in Mexico and get your pro card.
Yeah.
So you kind of just showed up like, hello, 21 years old. Yeah. It was awesome, man. It could tell back then.
I really had no expectations going into that show too. Cause that was the first bigger show I'd done like that. I'd done my regional qualifier, which obviously I won easily. And I really didn't have any expectations going to that. And then even less going into the show in Mexico. That was kind of like a last minute opportunity. I'm like, yeah, what do I got to lose? If I come 10th, whatever, it was last minute. If I win, hey, I turn pro. It's a free trip to Mexico too. So, screw it. That provincial show was my first big show that I'd been at. And it was definitely a great experience. I competed I was a super heavyweight, and I was 1 pound into the supers. I think
you were like 226, I heard, or something like that, weren't you?
221, I think.
221, okay.
Or if it was a 225 cutoff, I was 226. But I think it was 220 then.
Yeah, because they flip-flopped in Canada back then. They used to move it around.
I think it was 220 then. I was like 221.5. And I remember stepping on the scales at the weigh-in, and the guy's like, "Oh, like you missed your heavyweight weigh-in." And I was like, "I don't give a shit, man." I'm like, "I'll never." I'm like, I'm like, I'm not losing a pound. I look good right now. I'm like, this is how it is, And like, I hadn't paid attention to my weight once that whole prep. I had no idea if I was 205 or 260. Like, I had no idea. You know what I mean? I don't think I'd weighed myself the entire prep. I literally had no idea.
Really?
I stepped on the scale. It is what it is. He's like, you want to take, you have, I think it was 30 minutes or something. You can come back if you want to drop the pound. I'm like, I'm good, dude. I'm like, if I'm going to win an overall, I got to beat all these guys anyway. So what difference does it fucking make? You know what I mean? So I just I left, and that was that. I was obviously the smallest guy in the class, but like you said, I was in really good condition. And sometimes you get in those supers classes. A lot of the guys are big, tall guys, but definitely lacking conditioning, and you get the conditioning more in like the light heavies, the middles. I was a bigger guy, but still not as big as them, but just in way better shape. So I was able to kind of pull that one through.
You were in like ridiculous condition, man. So without a doubt, you're the best 21-year-old I'd ever seen at that point. I'd never seen a 21-year-old. I was just like, what the fuck?
Until my brother-in-law.
yeah. And then Bumstead showed up as a junior. Yeah, there you go.
I look at that now, and those guys that came after me, like him and Regan and, and some of these guys that were competing at juniors, I'm like, man, if these guys were around, they would have fucking blown me out of the water,
Well, I was just telling a story the other day about the 2015 Nationals. Mm-hmm. Was the year my last Nationals, and the junior class top three was Bumstead, Regan, and Cody Drobot.
Yeah,
and like it was the craziest juniors. Like
all pros now and all under 25, I think. So it's like
crazy. What about you, Dusty? What's your first Iain memory?
Well, actually, I wanted to segue on all this shows you just talked about because I'm curious. Were you doing your own prep in those shows or what?
No, I actually worked with Greg Doucette, who's a Canadian IFBB Pro. So he worked with me for the regional show where I qualified for that provincial level show, that show, and then the one that I turned pro at. So those are the 3 shows I worked with Greg at. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I mean, I guess that's the big question. The reason I brought that up is because so many guys, especially with a season like yours, that are up and down. The question mark for a lot of people watching is how, because they know a guy like you didn't miss a meal, you didn't cheat, you know what I mean. What were the changes this season that you kind of that you think caused the misses versus the hits?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the thing was, and this will kind of segue into, I don't want to ever speak anything poorly about Matt Jansen, who the guy I was working with. But, kind of some of the decisions that led to me leaving was, I thought there was just a lot of and I know this is with bodybuilding for sure, but it just felt there was a lot of guesswork going on, and it was and a lot of, I guess, not like trial and error, but just trying new things when I don't necessarily think they needed to be tried. When in the 2018 season, I had a lot of really good showings, the Olympia, I looked great. The show I won in Spain, I looked great. Vancouver, I was pretty good, but I got progressively better every show, and we learned a lot every show. And that's a lot of intel you're building to then utilize for the 2019 season. Right. And when it came to prepping for Toronto Pro, I just felt like a lot of that was forgotten, and it's I just thought it was we were trying to go for new looks and using new methods because it was okay, let's be a little tighter this time, or let's be a little fuller this time. It's but we already had a look that was pretty good. Let's just deal with those things in the last day or two. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and then Toronto, it's basically, I ended up I did a ton of cardio. I looked over dieted. I looked tired. And you saw that in the look that I had there for sure. I mean, my conditioning was exceptional. It was just, I was super flat and it's super tired looking, and it just didn't shine through, what I looked like at a day, 2 days out, or, it was my look was just gradually kind of depleting into the show. It just was not quite there, and then it was okay, well, we obviously didn't do that right. Let's go back to what we did do. And we kind of hit the nail on the head in Vancouver. And then it's let's try something new again now in Portugal after we just hit the nail on the head in Vancouver. And then again, it didn't really work out. Right. So I think it's there wasn't one specific thing. And I mean, and this is part of bodybuilding. This is not me shit talking to anybody or anything like that. I mean, I understand that this is how it goes. And, there is a lot of guesswork in this, right? But it was just it felt like we weren't quite using the tools that we had in our tool bag, and trying new things every time that didn't quite work. And it was I didn't want there to be so much guesswork, Yeah,
I think that when you look at a lot of these situations, I know I've done it, I'm sure Ron has too, you start altering your look for what you think. Basically, there's a look that Iain has that's the best look for him. Yeah. That's to be your best look against Dexter Jackson, against Luke, against any variety of people. Altering your look won't help you other than bringing your best.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. And for me, we started playing other people's games, and I mean, this was for Toronto. We knew that it was going to be me and John. This is not saying anything bad about Josh Wade or any of these guys or whatever. But right. I mean, before the show happened, when John announced he did the show, I knew it was going to be the Iain and John show. You know what I mean? I knew that this was going to play out. So then we started being okay, well, John's not usually known for being super, super sharp. So if we can be razor sharp and, push down, don't worry about the weight, just be hard as nails, I can edge John out on that. But then in doing so, for a guy like me, I'm not a Nathan where I'm crazy full black guy muscle that I could be eating 0 grams of carbs and I look full as a house. When I'm flat, I look like shit, So for me, then we push down, and then that little bit of flatness, I also lost the look of conditioning. So it was for me, I need to be popping full for sure. I mean, Tampa, I wasn't crazy full, but I was just so peeled at that point. I mean, it didn't really matter. I was still reasonably full, or else I wouldn't have had that look. I would have looked like I did in Toronto, right?
So one thing I wanted to point out, Iain, and I text you this right after your last show there. I said that I thought your quads were the most separated and the crispest up top I'd ever seen them on stage.
Were by far, yeah.
And it was funny because every time I ever saw you on stage, I always thought, Jesus, he looks awesome. But in his front poses, his quads don't seem to separate like they should be separating. Because I know, like, when you walk and you move, your quads always like pop and flash, right? And then at Tampa, when I saw the pictures, your quads were just split right fucking crazy.
I think that was more a posing thing than it was like a conditioning thing. You know, I think, and this was just a tweak that I made between Portugal and Tampa. I mean, I think before I was kind of sitting with my weight shifted on my right hip, and then, you know, kind of trying to, like, you know, contract my quads that way with the weight like centered, or like not centered, like shifted onto one side. Where then when I just went back and evened my weight out on both legs so I could push my hips back and kind of contract both of them evenly, I got a lot more separation through them. I was able to hold it a lot more. You know, when the weight was shifted, it was like I could kind of get like one quad, but then there was no tension on the other because my foot wasn't on the ground, so I was losing the contraction. So, you know, it looked a bit better in terms of like flow to the pose, but then when you're losing the quad contraction, it's like, who fucking cares then? You know what I mean? Yeah. So when I went back, I was just like, yo, both feet on the ground, just hit it, you know, don't overthink it. Then, yeah, I mean, I got a lot better. And obviously the conditioning helped. I mean, I was in really, really good shape in Tampa. So, you know, when the conditioning's there, plus then you make that posing adjustment, I think it went a long way, right?
What do you think? Like you were mentioning, you know, you got away from things that worked. So if you had to sum it up a bit, what do you think works for you?
I think for me, like, I don't have any trouble getting in shape, you know. I think the biggest thing for me is, you know, getting me in shape early, because I think it's easy for me to get in shape early, and then just feed me into the show, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Then I don't need any like magic near the end, nothing crazy like that. You know, I think that's just the best way to go about it. I mean, you know, I don't, if we just keep pushing things into the show too hard, I start to lose that look, and it's like no matter how much you feed me at the end, I can't really get it back, you know. So I think it's like, yeah, it needs to be like need to be there ready and early, like 4 or 6 weeks out, and then just slowly kind of eat into the show and gain that fullness and gain that look, you know.
Yeah, Dusty had another question, I know.
Yeah, I mean, really, mine was more lean towards your next step now with the off season, and this is actually kind of a question from the fans that I've been getting. So I wanted to hear your take, and Ron, yours as well. A lot of guys are hitting me, especially with the good old Instagram age, of you know, wanting to get huge and wanting to be 6% body fat all year round. And I kind of wanted to get your guys' plan for the off season, because as big as you already are, it is bodybuilding. So I'm assuming you're planning on getting bigger. How do you guys plan to approach the off season as far as eating and size you're putting on?
I mean, to be honest, I actually don't know the answer to this question. I mean, I just started working with the new guy for Tampa, right? I'm working with Patrick Tour now. So I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I haven't started my off season yet. We're kind of just, you know, doing like a little, you know, detox and kind of just taking some time right now, you know, to recover and let my body, you know, bring the training volume down, you know, bring the protein down, just relax for a bit. So I don't really know what the plan is, to be honest. I mean, it was first we kind of were, you know, taking this time, and then we were deciding what I was going to start next season with, and then we can kind of start to plan based off the time I had in terms of until I compete next. So to be honest, I don't really have the answer to that. Sorry.
Wait, a bodybuilder and a coach that says, I don't know. Those don't exist.
Yeah, they're very rare.
Yeah, I actually, I know what needs to be done. I mean, I know I need to grow, what shots I need to improve. I mean, what things need to be done. But in terms of what he has planned for me, I honestly couldn't answer that for you.
What do you do with your clients, I guess? Because the big thing I'm trying to get out to people is a feel, because Ron and I, that's kind of the point of the show, is with Just Bodybuilding. People are so obsessive. It's kind of like, what do you think, I guess, then would be some advice you would give to somebody who needs to make change in their off season, whether it be training, food, whatever?
I think the biggest thing, and I think this is, well, a lot of people don't take advantage of this off-season time, is they don't treat it like as seriously as they would treat a prep. They treat it as like time to chill, you know? And it's like, oh, this is time I can eat shitty food and I can be, you know, lackluster on my training. And, you know, I think that's a big mistake. And I think I've made those mistakes in the past. And until I really started treating it as seriously as I would treat, that 12, 16 weeks before a show when you're like gung ho, let's go, showtime. I mean, you got to treat the whole year like that if you really want to be a successful bodybuilder, right? So I think the biggest thing was just, the consistency all year, the consistency and the intensity and the training and the food. I mean, everything all year round is really what made the biggest difference. And, when I had the big jump from kind of being like, 7th, 8th, 9th in my 2016 season, and then teaming up with Matt and then, being top 4, I haven't placed outside of the top 4 other than the Olympia in like the last 7 shows I've done, Right. And that was just that 2017 off season. The only thing I did differently there was I was just consistent all year round. Like my meals, I'd wake up, it was like a prep. It was like, there was not like, oh, what am I eating today? Or, it was like, I woke up and I had my diet plan that I ate every day. It was the same, we progressively increased as if it was, progressive decrease, I guess, going to a show, but just the opposite, progressive with my weight training, being, systematic with that, your approach. I mean, not just like going into the gym and slanging weights around randomly. I mean, there was an actual systematic approach to that, right? So I think those are the things that really made the biggest difference, is just the consistency and the actual planning of it all, right?
I want to ask about the training because, Dusty and I are sort of big proponents of a couple of things. And the first is that if you want to be a pro, especially, then the training has probably got to be the thing you love the most about the whole process.
Of course, yeah.
So
I think all got into it to begin with, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you just said a systematic approach to training, and what do you mean by that? Like, are you tapering volume up and down? Are you're making adjustments like that?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like right now. So let's say right now, I'm, after the show, we brought my volume down to like basically the minimum effective volume. Like I'm doing very low volume. Focusing on just keeping the weights heavy but not outrageous. And just letting my body kind of, come back down and adjust. And then this is where, will be the starting point for it to start, and I'm doing no intensifiers now too. So like no drop sets, no rest pauses, nothing like that. So this is like square one going into the off season.
So do you train to failure? Like just to failure, like the edge of failure? Is that
like maybe, the odd set here and there, but no, right now I'm not training sets to 100% failure.
Okay.
I mean, I'm saying you should, but I'm saying in this phase right now, they're like, like a soft failure. It's like failure. But
that's a new term, Dusty. We got a new one.
That's what most people call real failure.
Like, if I like really like, got down, maybe got a couple partials, or maybe I could do a drop set. Like I'm saying, like those things aren't incorporated. But in terms of the base set, I'm pushing it to like say 90%.
Okay.
And then this will be the starting point where then we can start to incorporate, add some more volume, increase the weights as we go, start to add intensifiers, and then we can kind of build on top of that, right?
Cool. How many weeks would you take to get to like maxed out fucking ballistic, ridiculous training?
Yeah, I mean, that really depends. I mean, really that would be something that I would kind of play more by ear and just slowly increase until I feel like it's not, I'm not progressing within the certain set of exercises. Like let's say I'm maxed out on, I've been doing 405 for 8 reps on incline for the last 6 weeks. And, I can only add so many intensifiers and stuff like that to that. Then that's when I would kind of bring down or adjust or exact stuff from there. Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Dusty.
Yeah. I mean, I just love the hearing, the planning that I think a lot of guys, something we've been pressing is just regardless of how you're training, I find a lot of people just walk into the gym and they're kind of like, I'm going to train chest today.
Mm-hmm.
What should I do? And no,
yeah.
I mean, I'm still that guy walking around with a damn notebook, like my phone doesn't work, writing it down on a piece of paper because I still like it that way,
And I think there's a lot of guys who have probably been very successful just winging it every day. And I mean, if you can go in there and give it 100% and, you remember and you can be progressive with your weights and you're just a genetic freak, I'm sure you can get a long way that way. But for the majority of people, I mean, if you want to get the most out of your training, there needs to be some sort of systematic approach to it like that, right? And I mean, for me, where I know, especially in certain spots, my back needs to improve, my chest needs to improve. Like there's some spots I really need to make improvements on. I mean, those are the ones I really need to, watch in terms of that, progressive overload in the training to make sure that I'm actually improving on them, right?
Have you ever seen any improvements in a weak point by training it more frequently?
I personally haven't. I found that didn't do a whole lot for me. I've done it. I found like I did this with my chest and my back in a couple off seasons, and I felt like I just got worn down. I mean, my strength, like it was like I kind of got a initial uptake from it. Like it was like I felt fuller because I always had blood and nutrients in there all the time, kind of thing. And I felt good for the first like maybe 4 weeks, and then it was just like I started to just decline from there. Like I felt my strength start to go down. I never felt I was like 110% recovered from my workouts. And I wasn't progressing through the movements like I was when I was just doing them once a week and giving it 120%, Right.
That's something Dusty and I have discussed. I've tried a ton of frequency increases on all the body parts that I always had struggle with. And I just never really saw anything from it. And and Dusty said the same thing, We've talked about that before.
Yeah, no, it didn't do it a ton for me. And I mean, I know a lot of guys do it and get great success with it, but for me, and I think if you're someone that doesn't train with like insane intensity, and I think for the three of us talking, we're guys that train with like really high intensity. We're not guys that want to like, kind of pussyfoot it in the gym. I think with that kind of style of intensity of training, and then when you're also doing so much frequency of training, I think it's just not, like a formula for success. I don't think. I think if you're someone that's, your training's kind of like, pump training, and you're, getting good, blood in there, kind of like 80% intensity workouts. I think then, you could, probably train them more often, and maybe get some good results out of that. But I find for, if you're really going balls to the walls, it's just like, you're just going to drive yourself into a hole if you do it long enough,
Yeah, so, I find I've written out training programs for clients before, and they're like, "Oh, is this what you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, fuck no, this would kill me." I train way too fucking hard to do these 9 sets, 9 exercises I'm telling you to do. But I've seen your working sets that you send me, and I know we need this to exhaust the muscle. For me, I'm like, I do a third of that, and I get the fuck out of there, go eat.
Yeah, no, I feel it. Let me just plug my computer in here 1 second.
Oh, we got a low battery, Dusty.
Look at that shameless plug right behind him. Genius marketing with that shaker cup.
Yeah, that was awesome. I liked how you did that.
Oh, whoops.
My computer's actually charged. I was just doing it so I could.
You'll do well in this business, my friend.
Well played.
You've caught on early.
Wearing the West Coast tee right in the thing, and the team does.
There you go. You got to do it.
Marketing here.
Yeah, no, hey, if you're going to bring it up, I'll plug my gym for a minute. Really happy to have you out for the Van Pro and have you at the gym, by the way. It was awesome.
It's always a great, that's one of the biggest reasons I love doing the show is honestly to come out early and to get to train at that gym. I mean, where I live in Ottawa, it's just corporate gyms here, right? I'm like, I train at a good way for my body, like corporate health clubs,
The sight of you in a tank top at a Good Life, to me, is just actually so awesome.
Yeah.
I just love it.
At least the one I've trained at, I've been training at for a long time. So it's like everyone's seen it. So it's, I don't really like stand out that much. I'm also like, it's also the gym I train at here is kind of the one I think most of the fitnessy kind of people train at in the city.
Right. A lot of competitors and bikini chicks and
exactly. Like men's physique guys, bikini chicks, or people that are aspiring to compete. Obviously I stand out like a sore thumb, but Chris also has trained there for a while too. So, there's other guys there, but yeah, at the majority of Good Lives, I stand out like a sore thumb, right?
Yeah. I wanted to bring up something, and you casually told me the story about the scar on your tricep.
Yeah. And
I'm surprised that almost nobody I've talked to knows what that story is. Have you not really told it on a podcast or anything?
And this is actually like a running joke on my Instagram, is that when I post a picture, say a progress picture or something like that, and you can see the scar, and one person in the comments will be like, "What happened to your arms?" All the people that have followed me for years jump on them with just trolling them with hilarious things. Because they all know I've been asked a million times. So they find it hilarious when someone's like, "What happened to your arm?" So they're like, "Oh, I got in a shark," and
It's so funny, man. It's so funny.
It's so funny because they know the answer, but they know that I get frustrated getting asked it. But yeah, no. What happened was, this was, I guess, 2012. 2012, June 2012. I used to work for Popeye Supplements. So for those that aren't Canadian, it's a supplement chain we have in Canada. and there was a local fitness expo. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was called National Capital Fit Day, because I live in Ottawa, is the nation's capital. So it was like a little thing called National Capital Fit Day, and Popeyes had a booth there. So I was there with a couple of the other guys. We were working the Popeyes booth there, selling product, demoing stuff, whatever, you know how it is. And they had an arm wrestling event there that was televised, and the guy that was doing like the commentating for it, and then they also had some kind of event at the end where you could arm wrestle this 6-time world champion arm wrestler. So it's like people would line up and they could give it a go. This guy named Devin Laird, who's one of the best arm wrestlers in the world. He does a lot of YouTube stuff. I'm sure anyone could look him up, find a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got, obviously being, 2012, I wasn't like the size I am now, but I was still like 230 pounds. I was a young guy, being the biggest guy around there. Obviously everyone like coaxes you into like, oh, go give him a go, go, so I'm like, at first I'm like, no, it's all good, but then I was one of the girls I was working with at our booth. She wanted to go up and arm wrestle just for fun, like 2 hands, get a picture, that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll go and I'll, take the video for you, whatever. And then once I got over there, more people are coaxing me into it, like, come on. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it, Because like I know, like in anyone that watches or follows even a little bit of arm wrestling, muscle has really nothing to do with arm wrestling. It's like literally almost nothing. You see Devin, I mean, he's a foot taller than me and probably weighs 20 pounds less than me. I mean, he's not a humongous guy. I mean, he's, 6'6", like 240 or something, 230. So, I mean, I knew in my head, like, there's no chance that I'm going to beat this guy. Like, this is pointless. So I was just like, no. But eventually I succumbed to the peer pressure. I was like, fuck it. Okay, sure, So I go up and arm wrestle this guy. And I mean, he kind of is like, okay, let's, you're a big guy. Let me feel what you got. So I reefed on him a little bit. He didn't even move an inch. And then he's like, gives me a couple tips, wrap my leg around the bench, make sure you don't turn your body away from your arm, keep your eyes on your hands, just like small kind of beginner tips. I was like, okay, sure. So he's like, hey, you're a strong guy though. So I'm going to pin you now, like with certainty. He's not like, I'm going to try and pin you. He's like, I'm going to pin you. So I'm like, okay, cool. So it's like 3, 2, 1. And I mean, I probably shouldn't have tried as hard as I tried. I should have probably just let him pin me and just, taken it, take him on the chin. But obviously I was like, I ain't going down like some punk. So I had to give it 120%. And it didn't even move anywhere. It was like 3, 2, 1. It was just like, poof, and my arm just exploded. Loudest crack.
That's crazy.
It sounded like someone fired like a gun in the auditorium. I mean, it was that loud. How much? There was so much tension. It was like 2 seconds of pause, and then just like crack, and my knuckles fell out this way and hit the table on the other side. And he grabbed my arm right away and was like, "Oh shit!" He's like, "I'm like, that's not good." He's like, "No, that's very broken." So.
Holy shit! That's what I felt when I tore my quad. I felt like I got hit by a car and I heard a loud bang.
Yeah, I didn't feel anything when it happened, like because there was no like muscular damage or like anything like that. It was just a bone that broke. I mean, it was a spiral fracture. Like my arm broke. And it just kind of went out funny, and then he grabbed it, and like right away I was like, it was just like immediate shock set in, I'm like, what the fuck just happened, So he's like, oh, but he's like, you're broken, like real broken, you got to go to the hospital. So yeah, I mean, at first it was like this, it was just like the sound, like that really was like, I remember it. That's the only thing I really like distinctly remember of it today is just like how loud it was, like, I mean, I've had people come up to me 5 years later and be like, man, I was there when that happened. I was like 50 yards away and I heard your arm break. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Now, how does the arm, like, I mean, I'm sure you're so used to it now, but I can't believe how awesome your tricep healed because you sliced right through it.
Yeah. I mean, I got the surgery. So I broke it on a Saturday. I didn't have surgery till Wednesday. So I went to the hospital right away. I mean, because I was working an event, so they had to like bring me in an ambulance and shit, So I got to the hospital, and the surgeon, the ortho surgeon that could do the surgery wasn't available to do it till Wednesday. So then they basically just like shot me, gave me drugs and sent me home for 3 days in a splint, like just put my arm like this and just sent me home. I'm like, that was the worst 3 days of my life. I swear. Like to date, that was the absolute worst. Because once the attrition starts to set in a little bit, you know, and my bone was like this, you know, like it's spiral fractured, like it turned and then like separated, you know, because it's like a spiraling break and then like separated.
Jesus.
So like any type of movement, it's like, it's hard to understand until you've done something like this, or like, you know, had some kind of surgery that you can relate to. Like, I know a lot of girls that had their boobs done can probably relate to this, honestly. It's like even pressure that's not anywhere near your arm, it like fucks your arm up, you know? Like even trying to sit up, like trying to sit up out of a chair, just like pressure on your core, like your arm will like contract a little bit and it's excruciating, you know? Yeah. So like I couldn't even move. I couldn't stand up out of a chair. I couldn't do anything really. Like I had to live at my mom's house. I was single at the time. I didn't know Melissa. I met Melissa maybe 4 months after this, like later in 2012. But I had to live at my mom's house, and I literally like slept in a chair, ate in a chair. I mean, then she'd have to help me up and to go to the bathroom. I mean, like I felt pathetic. I mean, you know, and that was for those couple days. Now, also the couple days right after the surgery, it was about the same. But yeah, I mean, you can't do anything. And like I'd move even a little bit, and it was like, you know, the bones were moved around, hitting nerves and stuff in there because everything was just like jumbled up. You know? It felt so terrible, you know. And then so I got the surgery on the Wednesday, but like I was back training in 5 weeks. I mean, I was back at it quick. I mean, I think I got x-rays at like 2 weeks and 4 weeks, or 2 weeks and 6 weeks. No, I think it was 4 weeks. And once I saw the x-rays at 4 weeks, like I saw it with my own eyes. The bone was fused and there was a callus there. I'm like, well, it's not going to break again, you know? So I started going back to the gym. So
what did they tell you? Did they tell you you could train yet?
No, they told me they said not to. Because I mean, the biggest part was when your arm has been in a sling, especially with like that kind of damage for this long, the hardest part is just straightening your arm again. Yeah. You know, like arm, like all my tendons and everything were so messed up. Like my arm was locked straight I mean, that took me a good 2 weeks to even get straight. You know, that was the thing. So, I mean, you know, I kind of had one of my buddies' mom had an accident, you know, where she'd had her arm broken in a cycling accident, and had like, it's kind of like a arm brace that you put on that you can crank it open in like minor increments.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used one of those and just like kind of opened it a little bit every day until I got it straight. And then once I got it straight, I started, you know, weight training as much as I could, you know. I mean, like at first I was curling like 2.5 pound dumbbells, and then like the next time I'd do it 5 pound, and then, you know, I tried to bench press. I was benching the bar for a couple of days, and then you know, but I think honestly, getting back to the weight bearing exercise, especially like, I mean, people know like the benefits of, you know, doing weight bearing exercise for like bone density and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. You know, I think me getting back to that as soon as I could, you know, without obviously putting myself at more risk. Cause like I saw the bone was healed. I mean, he told me it was, you know, fused and calloused. It looked good, you know, but he was like, you know, wait a couple more weeks. Let's get you back in at 8 weeks. I think he said to do more x-rays or check it out. Or I had a follow-up appointment or something. But once I saw it was healed, I'm like, well, I don't really understand what's going to go wrong if I try and train this, you know? So, but I think that was really why I've had no issues since. I mean, I got back right away, got blood in there, you know, got the tissue moving around, things healed, you know, got some weight bearing exercise on that bone to like, you know, really firm it up. And I've had no issues at all. I mean, that was June. By the time I met Melissa in September, like I was 100% weight training, like as if it had never happened.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to ask you a couple questions about your family dynamic there with you know, you, Melissa, and Chris, you know, sitting around the table and that sort of stuff. Do you guys talk about bodybuilding at all, or is it avoided?
No, it's not avoided. Obviously, it's a big part of our life, so it's inevitable. You know what I mean? You know, especially certain times of the year. I mean, you know, like right now, Chris is prepping for the Olympia. I just came off a long season. You know, so obviously it is a part of our life. And I also coach both of them, right? So, you know, right now, obviously I talk to Chris every day about, you know, his Olympia stuff. But no, in like our regular life, it's not like, definitely not the main topic of conversation. You know, I don't think it's not really something we, you know, there's the odd time we'll see something on Instagram, you know, someone will have a little gossip for 2 minutes. But, you know, I mean, that's really the bulk of it. I mean, it's, you know, other than stuff that's directly related to our own preps or, you know, competing stuff, it's not a huge thing. And I also like some of my closest friends. I mean, like my best friend, who's my best man at my wedding, like who lives with Melissa and I right now, like he's as far from a bodybuilder as you could possibly be. I mean, like this guy doesn't work out. I mean, once in a while I go to the gym, but like he's just like a regular guy, like he likes fish and just do regular guy shit. And I mean, he's not into weight training at all, really. So, I mean, it's that's also something that's like, in my life, that's not like we're not talking about that all the time with him. Some my friends that aren't interested in it,
Yeah, I asked that because of the Instagram perception that people have of everyone, especially like they have that extra perception about kind of you guys because you're all around each other a lot. They think Dusty doesn't do anything else or think about anything else or that sort of thing. So yeah, sometimes that Instagram perception that people have of especially someone like you who's a popular champion.
Any of our Instagrams are obviously focused on our fitness lives and our fitness career. I definitely understand that, but I mean, like, my day-to-day life, other than eating meals and training, isn't like bodybuilding. I mean, we got dogs, we got a home that we got to take care of. And, we do stuff, with our families and during the day and stuff. That's not bodybuilding related at all for the most part. So I mean, it's definitely not something that outside of that, one aspect is definitely not something that's a major part of our life. No.
Yeah, Dusty, you got one more for him?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I was going to add with that little piece is I think people forget too, because of our careers, Instagram for me is work, and I'm sure it is for you guys as well. So I like relish in moments where I can go out to eat with someone and talk about them. I'm like, oh my God, tell me more. What's going on in your life? I'm bored of talking about me. Well,
and this is actually, I mean, on the flip side of this, I actually have a very close friend of mine that this was like something that kind of was a very big strain on our relationship because, I mean, he was a big fan of bodybuilding and, really looked up to me. And it was like anytime I would go out with him, it was like all he wanted to do was talk about my bodybuilding. And like if we were talking to people, he'd like want to show people my bodybuilding pictures. And like to me, it was like insufferable,
Right.
So it's like, man, this is already what I live with on Instagram every day. And like, can't we just be boys, and just like talk about normal shit. Let's talk about girls that you're sleeping with or whatever. I mean, I don't really care. I mean, I just don't.
Okay, tell us more, Ian.
Exactly. See, that's what we want to talk about. I don't want to talk about, bodybuilding with him all day, especially about myself. Like you said, I mean, I don't want him to, that's not what I want to talk about all day,
Yeah. That's why I brought it up. Just, it's funny. The thought process, it really changes. But my last question for you is this. Something I've kind of told people is when I got into bodybuilding, and this is a vague-ish question, but what I thought I was getting into versus what I am into now is very, very different. So I was curious, in any way you want to run with that, what are some things that you've bumped into that are not quite what you assume they would be?
Oh man, that's a really good question. It's hard to say because like, I think the biggest thing, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about social media. Like when I started bodybuilding, like social media wasn't part of bodybuilding yet,
Mm-hmm.
So I think where, how much is dictated by Instagram essentially now, in terms of getting the contracts and, how everyone's promoting themselves, like, how it's all dictated by that world now is obviously something I didn't really see. I mean, I thought back then it was just like you were a good bodybuilder, you made a ton of money, which is obviously not how it works at all,
Right.
You could not even bodybuild in this day and age and, make tons of money if your Instagram is, you got, some good tech savvy skills, right? So yeah, I mean, that would probably be the biggest thing. I mean, it's tough to think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, we'll get you on round 2 with the extended answer of that. But no, it's just something that I always run with because and I love the bodybuilding world that we're in now. And thankfully for people like me who are not going to be winning shows anytime soon, I've got my avenue to run with. But it is a very different world in a lot of levels. And I just find, one of the big ones that I think it's laughable is everybody thinks that there's, I always hear that, there's no camaraderie in bodybuilding. And I'm like, where do you bodybuild?
Yeah.
I mean, go to shows and we're fucking off backstage. I mean, yeah, people are here to work, but I mean, the work's done.
Yeah.
And there's no defense. I'm not stopping Ian. He's not like, we show up and what's done is done. We have a good time. And I think guys are surprised when they see that half the time depending on where everyone's going, people end up in the same place, eating, hanging out, and doing their thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just had one more for Ian. Dusty and I have actually trained together on the road and traveled and, worked out together with no sleep during the FIBO expos and all that sort of stuff. That whole round. What do you think about your training when you're on the road like that? Because we tend to try to go nuts equally as if we were at home. But you're a professional who's doing extremely well. Are you changing anything when you train on the road?
No.
Nothing.
No.
Good.
Actually, exact same. I mean, I always try and time it so that I don't have to train legs the first day I'm landing somewhere.
Okay, that's exactly what I do.
It's like if I know I'm going to have to train legs like the first day, I'll alternate things and train the day before I leave. Because I don't want to be like having to fly all day and have my maybe my meals are a little off timing. Like I'm not missing them, but say like I have a big gap between them where I don't have food, or your sleep's a little messed up, or you're a little dehydrated, whatever it may be. So I always want to make sure I get the leg training out of the way. Like I don't want to be doing that day one or when you're traveling. Other than that, I mean, I try and train the exact same. I mean, I honestly kind of like training on the road. I mean, you get to train at different gyms. I mean, you get to meet some new people. I kind of like it. So, I mean, I know a lot of guys find it very difficult, but I've never had any issue like getting in like an intense mode, like not in my own like habitat,
Right.
Like I can go where it is. I can put my headphones in, put my head down and get a good workout in. So yeah, I mean, that's just don't want to be doing legs day one.
No. Well, Dusty and I would love to get you over to England and get you down to Dino's during Body Power or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Ian. We really appreciate your time, and you're one of the guys that just has such a bright future in this sport. And I know you probably hate words like bright future and all that stuff because you're like, I'm already here, bitch. But I think there's a lot more in store because you just keep getting better, man.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, guys.
Later. So that was nice to have Ian on, Dusty. Guest one.
Absolutely. No, it was awesome first episode, and I felt it flowed really well. And I'm hoping that more and more people will see another side to what Ian brings to the table and kind of his journey, because I feel like as big as he is, not as many people really realize how quick he shot up the ranks here.
Yeah, no, man, it was good to have him on. It was good to see him come from that first show that I saw him at, when he was just 21, because he just exploded into it, and now it's just getting out of hand. So, happy to have him on. Definitely thanks to Ian. Check him out on Instagram, IFBB Ian. Make sure you spell the Ian right, IAIN. And, of course, Dusty Hanshaw, 08, and Rep 300. That's how it goes here on It's Just Bodybuilding. Is that it for episode 2, Dusty?
That's it. Make sure you guys just keep in mind where to see everything. Obviously, if you're wanting to grab the audio version, Advices Radio will be where you're going to pick that up. And then for now, you'll still be going to my YouTube, Dusty Hanshaw, to catch the YouTube version of these podcasts. And we'll work on the next 4 or 6 weeks transferring that over to our own place, because I have a feeling people are going to be wanting to fill these up. And as much as I love stealing them on mine, I think we need our own little home. Yeah, for sure. We'll get a YouTube page up and start kind of directing traffic. But we appreciate all the feedback. Let us know what you think of the interview with Ian. Let us know what you would have liked to hear more of. We could have talked about anything like we said. So we appreciate it. Thanks, Dusty. Remember, guys, it's just bodybuilding.